So now that we're in subdivision mode, I just want to show you how I go about doing a bit of sculpting here. I'm going to use the standard brush with alpha 1 just to give me a nice fine line and just creating some wrinkles and nooks, just creating some details here in the character's face. Come down here into the neck area and use my clay tubes brush just to build up some of these forms here. Nice to get a bit of a belly there. I'm going to step down my subdivision levels and use transpose to move down to this point. I want to actually hunch the shoulders a bit. I'm going to hunch that. Bring the transpose mask down the neck. Unmask this bit here. And let's move the neck up. And then transpose up to the base of the head here. Boop. There we go. Invert the mask, and then just transpose that forward a bit. Actually, that's quite good like that. I'll use the move brush just to bring the volumes of the rib cage out a bit. And I feel like that head's awfully large. I think we might actually benefit from enlarging the body so the head doesn't look quite so big. It's sort of fitting to have this big insect head be big, but I do think we could benefit from evening it out a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and go to scale, and let's see how it looks if we scale the body up just a bit. That helps. That looks less comical. If you get your head a little too big, then it starts really just to look silly. I'm going to mask the hands here. The hands look quite human, which is not that great, you know. I often find when I'm working with a creature, I prefer to have the hands look, you know, a little bit more monstrous. So I'm just going to use transpose move line here just to stretch those out a bit. Use the move brush to change that shape. And mask down to the fingers. Again, use transpose move to stretch those fingers out a bit. And I'm going to go ahead and spread the fingers. And I want to give a nice little curvature to these fingers so they feel a bit more like claws. I'll often hyperextend the end of the first finger. Just find that gives it a bit of a neat effect. I'm going to bring these thumbs back. And just do a little bit of inflating there. And I like to kind of bend the wrist just slightly, just to give it a little bit of a posture. And then we'll come back up here to the shoulders. And maybe we will try and bring those arms out just a bit. There we go. That's nice. And then if we bring those arms back a bit. And I'll go to transpose, bring all this out a bit. I'm going to thin the neck down just a little bit. Go into perspective mode so we get a different view of the creature now. I'm going to go in with my standard brush, create a little bit more detail, some roping musculature in the neck there. I might bring this out into more of a cowl of muscle here. Let's step up a subdivision level. Remember I said that I like to work at the lowest possible subdivision level that will give me the shape that I want. So I try not to divide up too high too soon, because I feel like that's just counterproductive for me. If I can make the shape at a lower subdivision level, it will look better when I step up to a higher subdivision level. Put some ribs in here. Just starting to suggest some ribs. There we go. And step up a subdivision level, and let's continue to suggest those ribs. It's actually quite a nice form that's happening there. I'm going to bring those clavicles out a bit. I'm a big fan of clavicles. They're one of my favorite body parts, so I really like to accentuate those in the sculpture. They're an important landmark on anyone, really. You want those clavicles to be visible. And I'm just using the standard brush to pick out little bits of shadow here. And I'm going to go with my clay tubes brush. And remember, I've turned off the alpha on my clay tubes brush, and that just gives me a much more subtle kind of a brush here. I really like the effect that you get when you turn off the alpha. It just allows me to sort of fill in some of these recessed areas a little bit. If you select alpha 1 and turn down your focal shift, it actually gives you this really nice bit of skin brush that you can stretch across, high points like this. If I stretch it across there, it sort of looks like skin stretching over those forms underneath. I'll show you here on the neck. It works really nicely if I drag it across the neck here. See, it builds into the low areas first, so it really creates a sense of sort of a tendon underneath the skin, stretching across those high points. Now I go to the standard brush and take alpha 58 and dial back my Z intensity, and I'll just use this to kind of create some nice wrinkles along the arm here, just to break up some of that specular highlight. I don't want to get too worked up about the skin texture here, but I would like just to break up the specular. Turn down that draw size. Just give us a nice sort of breakup there, bringing those wrinkles around the front. And we could actually add a subdivision level at this point, or we'll step up. We've got 2 subdivision levels actually, so you see how we were really far down the subdivision levels there. We didn't need much geometry to create the shapes we were creating. So just creating a little bit of detail here. I will sometimes detail the skin like this with just a leathery skin texture, and then continue sculpting and smoothing it away and sculpting it in again. So I might come in here and work more muscle form in. I'm not worried about erasing skin texture, because the more you put it down, the more random it becomes, and you see the previous layers hidden underneath the newer layers, and it just looks like realistic skin texturing. I'm just going to detail that a little bit, cluster a little bit there at the elbow, because there's usually a lot of wrinkling at the elbow anyway. And let's do some smoothing there on that hand that's awfully creased up. Just creating a nice bone texture along here. And there we go. So just kind of a sample of how I might go about sculpting into something after I had built it up with Dynamesh. So hopefully you find that useful, that bit of a demonstration.